know, the necessary trip. Everybody goes to Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and all those things. And this was 1948. Jackson was driving a gray Plymouth convertible. And my dad pulled up next to him at a red light in Washington, tooted the horn, and said to Justice Jackson, Neckers from Clymer. And they sort of scowled at each other and went in the other direction. Anyway, so that's my experience with Bob Jackson, but it's more than anybody else's here, right? Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about the Clymer case that Bob Jackson was involved in, and that's what he was called. I didn't know him as Justice Jackson. He was Bob Jackson, and he didn't always have just Bob in front of the name. Anyway, this is a picture of Justice Jackson with his son Bill at the Yale graduation in 1941. Bill was fortunate in the context that Justice Jackson himself did not have a college education, but Bill did. He had a college education from a very good university. And this is his graduation picture. Well, let's talk about the Clymer case for just a minute. Jackson was, in Sam Irwin's vernacular, just a country lawyer. And he didn't go to law school. He didn't go to college. He got a law degree by writing for the law. That was done in those days, and it was not so unusual. Neither was it unusual and when I started teaching in 1964 for students to finish 3 years of undergraduate work and then get admitted to medical school and go to medical school. So we've changed at this level. Now they line up to try and get their admissions taken care of, both law and medical school. But in the 60s, that was not the case. So anyway, Jackson was a small town country lawyer, Jamestown, and then my small town was a lot smaller than that. That's the town of Clymer. But when you have entrepreneurs in the town, they're going to fight with one another, and that's what happened in Clymer. This is a picture of Broken Straw Creek, which is about 1 mile out of the little town of Clymer, which is 20 miles from here. We've gone to Peak and Peak for lunch or something like that. That's what we're talking about. Small town, mostly Dutch immigrants, mostly sons of Dutch immigrants by the time this took place, and very entrepreneurial. Edison was very much associated with Chautauqua Institution, as we all know, and the light bulb really didn't show up much before the 20th century. The work that I'm talking about here began right after the beginning of the 20th century, and this little town built an electric power plant. And what they did was dam up the creek. What here at Tempest did was dam up the creek, and this is called Broken Straw Creek. I have this is called Broken Straw Creek, and they dammed this creek, and over on this side built a power plant and let the run from the water behind the dam turn the generator, which created electric lights in the little town of Clymer, up until the advent of what now we know, what I used to know as Niagara Mohawk. I'm not even sure what it's called anymore, but we knew it as the Niagara Company. And the Niagara Company bought these little electric companies in 1930, 1931, at which point this all became obsolete. And though you see the remnants of the dam, this dam was destroyed by a big storm that I happen to remember. I was a little boy, but I remember it. That took out the dam, and it's never been built. Now, what was the fight of it? Well, it turned out that over on this side, behind the dam, there was a lumber mill, a sawmill. And the man that owned the sawmill wanted to use this water to float his logs back to the sawmill, where they would be then processed and done whatever. And so he sued first to keep this guy, Tempest, who wanted the water flowing most of the year so he could have electric power most of the year. So he built the water out behind the dam. He didn't like the water going up the pond, up and down. So he sued over riparian rights. And the lawsuit was 1925, and the courts found that the riparian rights, if it was not natural water, you didn't have the right to sue. So the guy that owned the sawmill, basically it was too bad. There was a flood going on, and it wasn't anything that he could do anything about. So that was settled in 1925 on behalf of Tempest, who owned the power. And then down in here, there was land. And so Catfish was the other guy's name. He said, well, I'll fix him. I'll buy some of that land. And it turned out this guy was going bankrupt, and then he died. And what happened was there was a land contract, but never any deed. And so the bank, which my grandfather ran, had the mortgage on the property and was asked by Catfish to give him a deed for part of the property, which they didn't do. They said they wanted to sell it to recover the total mortgage, and that's what they eventually did. And the lawsuit was over whether or not they had the right, do I have this right, John? Whether they had the right to sell the property to recover what was the mortgage of the man who had this land. That happened to be the first case that Jackson won in the New York Court of Appeals. So what I heard as a boy about Bob Jackson was that he was a lawyer, a very good lawyer, but then something happened. And what was that? Well, this is the power. Excuse me. This is the power company as it existed in 1925 or so. And this is a picture from Google Earth of this property, and it's here, you can't see it. So, bottom line is that property is a broken straw property, and that's another picture of the man. Now, what was happening at the same time in the world? Well, what was happening at the same time in the world was in Dessau, in Germany, first in Weimar and then in Dessau, some very avant-garde architects were beginning some movement which we know still today as the Bauhaus movement. So this happens to be a picture from the Bauhaus Museum in Dessau of modern German chair, with the German chair being 1925. This was started by, you can't see this, but this is Walter Gropius, German modernism, Paul Klee, Vasily Kandinsky. You know some of the names probably better than I do. And in Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, the Steve Jobs biography, Jobs talks about how much he got from the Bauhaus movement that helped him design the first Macintosh. Those of you that had them, you remember that they were, those cumbersome little things that sort of looked, I don't know what they looked like, but that was where Jobs got his idea. Well, Dessau was extremely important in what became the Nazi movement later on. Dessau is about 75 kilometers east of Berlin, and Bauhaus is still there. If you go, you can visit the Bauhaus. I don't think they're active in their school still, but you can see lots and lots of relics of the Bauhaus movement, including the houses that were occupied by Gropius and Klee and others. Gropius, after the Nazis closed the Bauhaus, moved to Harvard, and that's where his career concluded. Well, what else was going on was that this is a picture of the Dessau super refinery, which is about 3 miles east of where the Bauhaus facility is. It's very inauspicious, basically, not very big when talking about the Bauhaus. It's just sort of a building. And 3 miles east, 3 kilometers east, is this remnant of a building. This is Dessau super refinery. And that's the super refinery where, by 1922, the scientists there, Gerhard Peters and his colleagues, had learned to take the residue from sugar beets and destroy the residue in such a way. What the sugar beet refinery is a hydrolysis process and heat it with acid and water, which releases the sugar, and then what's left behind. I remember one time when I was a boy, I went with my father to Swift's or Armour's in Chicago to see the slaughterhouse and meat processing. And I remember the guy telling us, we use everything from the pig except the ointment. We sell everything from the pig except the ointment. And that's what these guys were doing. They had residue left after they had completely removed the sugar from the sugar beets. And that residue contained what we call in chemistry benzyl cyanide function. And that benzyl cyanide function, when you heat it, releases hydrogen cyanide. And that was discovered in 1922. The first patent that I found is a patent authored by Walter Harris in 1922 on the decomposition of what we now know, or what we have known as amygdalin. Have you seen the word amygdalese recently in the New York Times? don't know exactly what it means, but megolin is the residue you get from sugar beets in the destructive hydrolysis that produces sugar. And then we also knew it in the early 70s as laetrile. Anybody ever heard of laetrile in here? Laetrile was a cancer palliative that turned out to be totally false, but it was nothing more than this residue that you get from sugar beet. It was not effective at all, but it nevertheless caused a lot of people to go to Mexico to get it. Anyway, this refinery is still there. That picture is March 12th, 2012. And there is in Dessau a fairly active organization dealing with what was made in Dessau Cyclone B. So there's a very active, relatively active group trying to find out what went on in their backyard. And I've had contact with them. Interestingly, when I made contact with the woman who I found on the internet who was responsible for the Dessau communication, she spoke very good English, and we had a conversation for a few minutes. And I remember this is former East Germany. And she said, well, I spent 1995, 1996 as an exchange student in Mansfield, Ohio. So she was about 90 miles away from where I was born. Anyway, I tried to get more information from her, but had nothing more than just a little book on the Cyclone B case. And then what happened? Well, what did they use Cyclone B for? They used it, and legitimately so, to get the rats and other varmints out of holds of ships. Dessau's on the Elbe, and about, I don't know how far away Hamburg is, but it's relatively close, so they ship the products up the Elbe to Hamburg, where they use it in Hamburg, Bremerhaven, to get rid of the varmints from the holds of ships. Well, these were destructive times in the world. I showed you a picture of the Climate Power Company, and Greg mentioned that my grandfather was the president of the Climate Bank. Destructive times in the world, a bunch of Dutch immigrants who were making their way out of really poor land in western New York, scrambling along, making a living, finding their way to succeed in life. And what happened, well, 1933, the election, well, 1929 first, 1933, the election of 1933, and Roosevelt's first act, President Roosevelt's first act, was he closed the banks. Any bank that was not a federal bank was closed. So the bank furlough was March 1933. My grandfather was president of the bank. He lost quite a bit of money, and I can personally remember when he said to my uncle, who was a professor of chemistry also, sometime in 1950, 1951, they didn't have P&O insurance in those days, no director and officer insurance, no Chubb insurance company. When he said to my uncle, well, I finally paid them all off. What did he pay off? Well, all the depositors that had money in that bank, which was solvent, was substantially solvent in 1933. He paid them off personally. So by 1952 or something like that, he was no different than a lot of little business stuff, a lot of little town businessmen. But he paid them personally, and into my lifetime, so I can remember that case. The man who sued on the question of the power company, Broken Straw Creek, was named Earl Cavendish. Earl Cavendish was from not too smart stock. He was from not so smart stock because his father moved to Plymouth to start a sawmill because he didn't think that George Eastman, with whom he was working, was ever going to make it. And I heard that from Jim Cavendish. Some of you here may know. So in any event, he wasn't too smart. He started a sawmill in Plymouth instead of working with what became Kodak. In any event, when the federal authorities came to close the Plymouth Bank in 1933, Cavendish was also a member of the board, so he sent his workers from the sawmill down to meet the revenues who were coming to take over the bank. This is a story I heard this last summer. I don't have any confirmation of it. There was no confrontation, but it was that level of intensity and that level of concern and that level of animated disgust that existed here. Well, we all know what happened in Germany, and that is that Adolf Hitler and his thugs took over. And they sent the Bauhaus scrambled, moved to Berlin for a while. But from that, we brought on the scientists of war. The scientists of war. And this is a picture from Marty Sherwin's book, American Prometheus, the biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer. If you haven't read it, I strongly recommend it. It's really a very detailed discussion of the Oppenheimer project case. And the interesting thing that I always remark about is that we heard Ken Heckler say the other day, maybe this was in the interview, we heard Ken Heckler say the other day that it was a no-brainer to decide that we would use the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. Was that in the interview? When did we have that? So, no-brainer to use the atomic bomb in Hiroshima because they predicted that there would be 300,000 soldiers who would have to fight liberating the Japanese from the islands if they went into the main island. And Truman would have all those families with all of their family concerns. And so, no-brainer will drop the atomic bomb. Now, so that is this situation. This is Groves. Lester Groves was the Army general that ran Los Alamos, and J. Robert Oppenheimer was the man who orchestrated the incredibly complicated research that led to the destruction. The destruction was the first decomposition of uncontrolled type was at Alamogordo, New Mexico on July 24th, 1945. They coincided exactly with this. Truman was at Potsdam when this was announced, when he found out that the atomic test had been successful. Truman hadn't been in office very long, but he found out at Potsdam that the test had been successful. The baby is born, and he decided at Potsdam. And I've tried to explore where that decision was actually made. Sherwin doesn't know for sure, nobody knows for sure, but we do know it was made in this time frame and communicated. And as a result, the end of the war was upon. This is the table in the Sulenhof Potsdam Castle, where the discussion of the division of Europe took place. Now, what was Germany in 1935, 36, 37? Well, it was basically a landlocked country. It was basically a country which had no petroleum, had no rubber. It actually had no nitrates. So it had to make everything by itself. In a sense, it was like the entrepreneurs that made electricity in the little towns around here. This happens, we've seen so many pictures of Nuremberg that I thought I would not show too many more pictures. This happens to be the first witness for the prosecution at Nuremberg, a chemical engineer from New York University by the name of Nathaniel Ellis, who testified that the Germans didn't have any source of petroleum, they didn't have any source of rubber, and so they had to make it themselves. And they managed to do that from air, water, and coal. So they made, by 1938, with the help of Standard Oil and Ethel Corporation and those things that John D. Rockefeller did in the interest of business opportunity, managed to make aviation fuel that was 100 octane from coal. And so the Luftwaffe flew on coal fuel from the beginning of the war. And so who did this? Well, it turns out that Farben did it. What was Farben? Farben was a chemical cartel of 11 companies, 5 big ones, BASF, Bayer, Fish, Haifa, and Kagusa, big companies that had lots of resources and lots of people. And so those people managed the manufacture of these products that were necessary to drive the engines of war in 1939 by their contributions to the Nazi effort. These people were also the biggest donors to the Nazi Party. So the biggest donor of the Nazi Party was I.G. Farben. So they made good opportunity better by letting the government fund their projects, and they funded the government as well.
So that's what the Nuremberg trial of Fargo was about, was how complacent, how cooperating were these individuals in the Fargo managed. Now what comes home to me fairly quickly is that as I look at the 23 persons that were on trial at the Fargo trial, 11 of them are organic chemists, 11 of them wrote PhD dissertations that mine is taken from. They set the model for a PhD program, PhD dissertation in chemistry. Chemistry, advanced degree in chemistry, and I'm delighted to say we have at least one other who has an advanced degree in chemistry with us today. An advanced degree in chemistry is a mentored process. An individual works closely with a faculty member in a PhD granting institution, and together they develop a research path, a research pattern, and a research output that leads to the eventually leads to a thesis and a dissertation, or thesis dissertation, and on top of that, publications in the open literature, and also, in many cases now, patents in both the United States and around the world. It's a one-to-one relationship, and it's unique in chemistry because it's one-to-one individual kind of thing. Physics is a team effort, and engineering very different too. It's a very unique kind of personal relationship between faculty and student. Now, when the atomic bomb was dropped in the United States, we gave awards. This happens to be the picture of James Bryant Conant, who was a founding member of the National Defense Research Council, with Oppenheimer, George C. Marshall, and Omar Bradley, the 1947 commencement of Harvard, in which Marshall announced the Marshall Plan. So they're in the backyard of Harvard President's house, waiting, and of course Oppenheimer was at the side, very pensive, very concerned, and that's what he was, following the on-board test. And we all know what happened after that was the security issues that came up with Teller and Lewis Strauss. Well, Nuremberg Chautauquas had enough coverage, so I sort of thought I would bring us around here for just a minute to something that is sort of interesting. 3 years ago, maybe you don't remember this, but 3 years ago, one of the bands that Roger Rosenblatt brought with him was Gary Trudeau. On Friday of Roger Rosenblatt's week, Gary Trudeau talked about Doonesbury. Now, my kids read Doonesbury, but I never was smart enough to, so Trudeau was there, I figured I should read it. And about April of the next year came this I gave us credit because we were teaching our course during that week. Probably not true, but did it anyway. It's this, and that is that I guess my conscience is finally kicking in, Boopsie. The truth is, I've sold over 3 million calories at McFriendly's, and only 600,000 of those calories were necessary. On the other hand, I was just following orders. Well, wasn't that the Nuremberg defense? No, I was just filling orders, I'm sorry. Lonely servant filling orders. Wasn't that the Nuremberg defense? No, that was following orders. So this is Doonesbury, spring of 2009. I happen to put BD up here, overlooking this particular Doonesbury strip. Harrisburg, Ohio, this spring. Now, I don't know about you, but this sort of struck me as a funny advertisement for how you find a wedding reception. Mommy and Daddy's wedding. Belmont Country Club, which is up the street. And what these guys who put that there didn't know was what I found out after I gave the talk here and talked about Gary Trudeau from my next door neighbor. And that was my next door neighbor was a professor at Yale and actually head of the Department of Medicine at Yale. And he's a good friend. We were playing golf and we were just sharing the story about how Gary Trudeau was at Chautauqua. Boy, was he funny, and we really enjoyed it. And my colleague said that he talked about Brian Dowling at all. I said, well, sure, he was part of it. Well, it turns out that was his former son-in-law. I'd say former. So what this guy did was put this baby picture of BD's former son-in-law on BD's former father-in-law's lawn. So anyway, transition to the next item. Science means invention. What happened in Germany during the war was there was a necessity. And so they managed to invent new products from coal that they could, in fact, in fact, sell and use. This is a picture of Robert D. Coghill. This man has some Chautauqua currency as well. 2 years ago, Lauren Belfer was here talking about Fierce Radiance. She's the young woman who wrote the book on Buffalo, the electric power company in Buffalo. And that was in the City of Lights. But this book was called Fierce Radiance. And Fierce Radiance dealt with it in a historical novel, dealt with the development of penicillin during World War II. This guy, Coghill, was a very creative investigator at the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Peoria, Illinois. You remember penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1929 in an accident. And from 1929 through the 30s, Fleming tried to develop it as an antibiotic for sale. But there was no success in that. Fleming wasn't very good entrepreneur. He was a little bit careless. And on top of that, he was in a hospital that didn't have a lot of recognition in the English system. So the development of penicillin as the war broke out was taken over by two professors at Oxford, Fleury and Abraham Chain. And they were the persons who were taking that technology into the marketplace if it was something that could be beneficial. Well, the British were being bombed at this time. This is 1940, 1941. And so the Rockefeller Foundation stepped in and they said, we'll give you the money to come to the United States and we'll see if we can work out some details for you to work with our companies here and then develop what is this potentially new wonderful antibiotic. At this time, the only antibiotic was sulfanilamide and sulfa drugs. And sulfa drugs were controlled completely by the German cartel. They were made here. We could make them because they're simple to make. But the only antibiotic was sulfa. By this time, there were lots and lots of injuries occurring on the battlefield. And so as a result, penicillin was something that they were really interested in. So what happened was the Rockefeller Foundation, the Rockefellers brought the English investigators, Fleury and colleagues, to the United States, New York. They were sent by Vannevar Bush to Washington to the Department of Agriculture. They connected them with the Agriculture Department in Peoria, Illinois. This guy, Coghill. And Coghill developed technology to cause funguses to grow under the surface of crops. The penicillin that was being grown in England was being grown on the surface of crops. But if you use the whole broth instead of just the surface, you could make a lot more with just one composition. And Coghill developed that. Coghill then took that technology and worked with the companies that would make technology become a commercial product. And by the end of 1942, early 1943, we were actually testing penicillin on patients in New York City. And by the time the war was in 1944, 1945, penicillin was carried by many of the soldiers as they went into battle. Well, we all know what penicillin's done for us. We all know how penicillin has changed our lives. Well, that came out of World War II, not unincidentally. And this is a guy, sort of inconspicuous scientist, never given a lot of credit, who in fact was really important with this technology. Here's a little vignette that I like to show. Politicians start wars. They send little guys to fight them. And when they get in real trouble, they call the scientists, let's get it over with. A little bit cynical, but scientists try and end, and that's the 20th century experience, and that's back now. So what other things were going on in the United States? Well, this is a picture of Father Julius Newman, who was Newt Rocky's mentor at Notre Dame, professor of chemistry. Newland had come to the United States from Belgium around 1900, studied at the Catholic University, and eventually became a professor of chemistry and a priest, and he went to Notre Dame. And in his work at Notre Dame, he discovered the reaction of acetylene with itself to make divinyl acetylene. And divinyl acetylene became the critical compound which one made chloroquine, and from chloroquine one would make neoprene, which was the first synthetic rubber in America. So Newland had a patent on this technology. The time here has been the same time, 1925, 26, 27. Newland had a patent on this topic technology that DuPont bought, and they bought it to produce neoprene, which became very, very successful for them. And what did they pay for it? Well, Father Newland couldn't take royalties from his because of his position. So they bought the Notre Dame library for books for a number of years. So Notre Dame Library books of chemistry were bought by DuPont up through the 30s. Newland also had another not so positive contribution to the war experience, and that is he treated acetylene with arsenic trichloride. And out of that came monovinyl chlorovinyl acetylene, which we now know is lewisite. If you're from Willoughby, Ohio, the lewisite plant was on the old Ben Burr site in Willoughby. They made about 100 tons, as I remember, lewisite there in 1917 and 1918. The director for that project was our old friend from Harvard, James Bryant Cohen. Anyway, that's Newland, and that's neoprene. And of course, during the war, anybody could make money during the war, my father used to say, because the prices were fixed, and all the neoprene you could make, you could sell to the government. Right? So there was this connection between university, scientists, governments, and the political side, which made war at this time, at least, a pretty good business. Now, after the war, we go back to peacetime, and then the bureaucrats start taking over what goes on in the scientific research. This is a picture from some cartoon that one of my students found. Your proposal is innovative. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use it because we've never tried something like that before. And for those of us who've been through the mill with writing proposals, I don't know how it is in the law, but for us, you live and die with your next NSF grant, or at least I used to, which is why I no longer write grant proposals to get money from NSF. So you live and die by your next NSF grant. And these young kids that are coming out of graduate school are awful smart. And so for old guys, you've got to write the next proposal to be as good as the first one we wrote 40 years ago, or 30 years ago. And then you got guys like this, saying things like that. We heard Howard Fiest say the other day, what did he say? He spoke German, so he was sure the army would send him to Japan. Well, that's the sort of thing we face all the time. Anyway, what I want to do now is I want to take you through some inventions of basically my own, which I think sort of surprise you. Things that I've been directly involved in a 40-year career, 45-year career, most of which was at a small state university in Ohio. Del Latta was our congressman at the time. He was one of two who was on the Watergate Committee and held out for Nixon until the very end. So that's the sort of place that we're talking about. And so I want to talk about some examples of the American dream that happened from basically my students and myself that sort of show what invention can lead to in the technical community. This happens to be timed, I would say, about 2 weeks ago. This photo, which I got from Hope College about 6 months ago, reminded me of the awesome responsibility of being a mentor. Now, I told you a little bit about how scientists work. They work with one-to-one teams, and they work very closely with students. Very, very closely individually with students, and these relationships go on for years. So I still hear from students that were in my labs in the 60s. I still hear from students all the time who were in my labs in the 70s. So there's a strong one-to-one relationship between faculty and student. This picture from Hope College is 1966. Ted Ugama has been for years the head of biochemistry at Rush University in Chicago. Bill Valenti is head of emergency medicine at Michigan State University Medical School. I don't know where she is. He worked for many years for one of the oil companies. And Paul Scott. You notice down here, Paul says his name is Paul Scott. And he was in my lab for 3 years. He spent the last part of his career with me in the Netherlands on an exchange student basis. But he was a very good student at Harvard, in the same labs I did at Harvard, got his PhD in 3 years. Decided he wanted to teach, found himself in 1970, there were no teaching jobs in chemistry. I happen to know one at Wayne State. He got that job and spent his career there. Well, this is 45 years later. Now, what I took this in for, you can't see it perhaps, but this building is named the A. Paul Scott Building at Hope College. Paul became very, very wealthy, and for this I need to have some help from my colleagues in the audience. We're going to make you all chemists. Here's a start. Ever seen these things before?
Yep.
You know what I got? Oops. I got a lot of them, so anyway. All right, so I want you to demonstrate with these things. I want you to, you know how to, did you break it?
No.
All right. So here's these are something called silos. I don't know what they call them. But what I want you to do is pick them up and follow the directions that are on the label, which say break them. So you take both ends and just break, just try and break it. Okay? Jim? No? There you go. Woo! He's a chemist. Look at, we got two chemists in the front row. We got in the back row. Who's got that one? There you go. We got three chemists all in the front row. You got one back there, break it.
Notice, Sheldon, it's the lawyers who made it happen.
That's right. The lawyers who made it. Jim made it. Hey, it's break it. There you go. All right, so I got more if anybody wants one. Johnny, you want one? Okay. Anybody know what the name of this is? Well, Xylene, that's right. Well, that is the name. That's a commercial name. But what's the chemical phenomenon? It's called chemiluminescence. Anybody ever see this kind of phenomenon around your house? Lightning bugs. Right? So what Paul Scott did, he said, now if you take that home, it'll last about 48 hours. What you did was you took a chemical compound that was in a small, easily broken glass container, and you broke it into another chemical compound, and they reacted, and they generated something that was able to make the fluorophore. Liz has the fluorophore on something she showed me, to make the fluorophore fluoresce. And that's a chemiluminescent process. What Scott said was, well, suppose we could do that by a chemical reaction of a species that would react with a biological substrate. So suppose we could take a chemiluminescent reaction and cause it to be an analytical reaction that would detect biological substances in vivo. So we developed chemiluminescent diagnostics. You happen to treat yourself with aspirin, you want to know how much aspirin is in your urine. It has a chemical reaction that reacts with the urine that generates light, and it's a very sensitive detector. Chemiluminescent diagnostics. 40 years of his experience, much of which came from chemical reactions that we had studied together. And out of that came a company called Lumigen, which he sold back in Coulter in 2006. He was a sole owner for $186 million. And what did he do with the money? He built two buildings, one at Wayne State and one at Hope Valley. He gave the money to the institutions that had nucleated his career. So, an invention, an American invention, a business that was started out of the university in Michigan by an American inventor. So, the thing I want to point out in this building is this. His name on this building is no longer Paul Scott, it's A. Paul Scott. Well, that's all the way I've known him from my whole career. I thought he was A. Paul Scott. But it turns out he said to me at a meeting that we had not 2 years ago, you know how that came about? I said, no, I thought you were always A. Paul Scott. I know your father's name is Arthur. He said, you said to me when I was developing my research career and on occasion of our publication of our first paper, that I had a first name. Why didn't I use it? And he then said, well, my father used it. And so I've always been called Paul. Well, I said, give your father some credit, call yourself A. Paul. And that's what he did. And the responsibility of the mentor, you don't realize how significant the interaction is, student with faculty. So that was really sort of a nice experience. And I really like this one. Greg, you'll like this one too. Here's the picture of the current board of trustees at Hope College. Here's the president. Here's Scott. And over here is our rich garbage collector, Pete Eisinger. Wayne Eisinger owns what? Miami. What's he own? Tampa Bay Bucks, something like that. Anyway, so we've displaced the garbage collector on the board of trustees front row. Anyway, so that's Paul Scott. But this stuff goes on all the time. I talked to my office yesterday about a project that we have going on now in my company for the U.S. Department, the U.S. Army, and the Army Surgeon Corps, Surgeon General's Corps. You never thought about it, but probably, no, we don't have to. But the number of combat deaths that are caused by arterial bleeding in the first 30 minutes is almost 70%. So somebody's injured in the battlefield. The battlefield injury is lethal if they can't control the breathing in the first half hour. Well, how do they teach soldier recruits, like the Howard 3S, who was very young, barely speak the language, to learn about how they treat quickly to die colleagues on the battlefield? So they do a lot of training with young recruits and in EMT kinds of things with biological blood simulants. And what they've used, all of them, have been blood simulants that are not simulants at all. They just use animal blood for the testing. Now, animal blood has a problem. First one, you've got to have an animal to get it from. Second place, when you get it, it has biological properties of its own. And those biological properties are, you know what blood is from, not from a turnip, but from, a rabbit. And they have properties that are not particularly good for training purposes. It changes with time. So they asked our company if we could make blood simulants that were chemical products that could simulate the behavior of blood. It's not easy. Blood has a certain viscosity, it's a certain flow, all that sort of thing. And so my guys now have, just this week, next week, will report to the U.S. Army about their blood simulants. The problem, 4 of 9 critical hemorrhage control training procedures involve the use of animal blood, and that has issues. The use of artificial blood, which is chemical, and wash and get off. So here's the U.S. Department of Defense, triggering in a small business in Ohio. Good opportunity for bright people to work for them, based on a wartime company. Now, the third thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit older and a little bit even more successful, and that's that we've heard all sorts of complaints from the stage here about the demise of the newspaper and the demise of hard copy books. I was quite surprised last night when I walked out of the amphitheater to actually see some people reading hard copy books. Most people have Kindles, but we hear a lot of complaints. Roger Rosenblatt and others complain, well, gee whiz, we're not going to have books in the future, what are authors going to do, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we all know that printing is growing in digital ways. Three-dimensional printing is growing even faster. So, you know, we live in a three-dimensional world. Your hand, left hand, right hand, is in 3 dimensions, not 2. If you take a picture of it, that's a flat, 2-dimensional object. So wouldn't it be nice if we could take, let's say, a CAT scan of your hand, and if you wanted to see the image, I hand you the CAT scan as a print, 3-dimensional print. Well, here's some examples. Personal color 3D printers, functional prototypes, real cars. Suppose it would be possible to repair the cam, I don't know, you still have camshafts on cars, repair the camshaft on your car by doing it directly, not having to have somebody else make it, you could make it in your own garage from the material. So anyway, that's 3-dimensional printing, 3-dimensional manufacturing. And this is another item that I was directly involved in. It's something called stereolithography. This is a picture from a 1986 patent. And in stereolithography, what one does is one takes a solution here that can be changed from a liquid to a solid with light. And under that, on top of that solution, one puts a platform. And then one uses a laser, and one draws the laser over the surface and lets an image form. And that's the image of one layer. And then one drops the platform a little bit and builds the second layer. Drops the platform a little bit and one makes the third layer. So it's something called additive modeling. And I began consulting for this company in 1987. I saw the inventors' technology, they hadn't done anything to go public. So I began with this company in 1987. The company's called 3D Systems. They're located now in Rockville, South Carolina. They were in California at the time. Anyway, I was teaching chemistry for undergraduate organic chemistry students. And the hand idea that I used just a minute ago was a real issue because most chemistry students who take undergraduate organic chemistry go to medical school. Now, I don't think you want somebody removing the brain tumor it has a hard time to detect from the difference of left from right. And that is an issue with about 75% of the students that take organic chemistry. So I decided it would be well if we could take medical images and convert them to three-dimensional models that a surgeon could use to plan a surgery. So here's that story. This is one of the mummies at the Toledo Museum of Art. I don't know which one it is. They have two hidden most of the time, but this is one of the mummies at the Toledo Museum of Art. And this is a CAT scan, and this is an X-ray of that mummy's head. And out of that X-ray, you can take dimensional X-rays. And so about 20 years ago, a radiologist at one of the radiology laboratories in Toledo said, well, let's take that mummy and let's make a CAT scan. Let's actually see some things about what that mummy's actually like. So they took that mummy, which I just showed you, dark of night to one of the hospitals and did CAT scans on the mummy. And we then printed each individual layer of the CAT scan. So we actually then made, with part of whatever part of the anatomy one was wanting to look at, we actually made that layer one at a time in that technology called stereolithography. And this is what that looks like in the process. Because what's happening is the layers are being formed by a photochemical reaction of a laser with some material that's, those of you who are dentists know this technology exactly. This is the technology used to fill a tooth. Same technology for a different application. So, next step, here's the mummy's head, that's his pelvis. We didn't know at this time whether it was he or she. That's a few processes later, went to a forensic pathologist at the University of Michigan, and out of that came my only publication in the Journal of Modern Egyptian Art, which was collaborative with one of the museum curators. A mummy comes to life in Toledo. So here it is. The journal is a Modern Journal of Ancient Egypt. A mummy comes to life in Toledo, and this is with the work of the forensic pathologist. And out of that came this. And if you go to the Toledo Museum now, this is what you see. And there's the bronze image. So these things have just come off a big exhibit of Egyptian artifacts and technology, and we're part of a show that just finished within the last, 60 days, something like that. Why did this particular technology come about? Because the inventor had the idea and could make layers build a model, and we said, well, there's an application. What's the application? To teach young people the difference between the left hand and the right hand. And out of that came this kind of, and hospitals, major hospitals today, use that technology. The biggest case that I know was the separation of some Siamese twins at one of our Air Force hospitals in Texas, someplace, maybe 10 years ago, in which they made three-dimensional models. So if you look now, this company went from no startup, 4 guys in a garage, to May 27th of last year, 2011, it became DDD on the New York Stock Exchange. It's now got a market cap of about $2 billion, which is sort of fun to watch. In any event, so that's a little bit of how invention can happen in the academic and industrial community. Jackson's career, to return to him, was that he was the best that there was, the best in the world, at judging after the fact. Nuremberg, everyone we talked to about the Nuremberg defendants who saw them remarked how ordinary they were, how unexceptional they were. And that sort of is us. You know, we're just part of that equation. His judgments at Nuremberg were the judgments of ordinary men who've done extraordinarily evil things. His life was one of reaction to the acts of others, which is what law is all about. Inventors, and I use my grandfather here because he was an inventor, they find things that people need and they invent, and hopefully they do it right. And out of that come products. Scientists are the pawns of government, and here's the basic bottom line. We do what you tell us to do. If you hadn't told us that you needed testing of blood simulants and said, here's $1 million, go do it, do you think we'd be doing it today? Of course not. We'd be doing something else. And if that direction is to go make sarin, or as we were talking about the other day, go get rid of sarin, well, that's your choice. You're the people of the United States. So we work for you. German scientists work for their governments too. What are the products of this work? Well, dollars that support jobs in our areas around the United States. And they do lots and lots of other things, sometimes as a result of patriotism, and because they're directly working for the defense agencies that develop the products that are used by the Defense Department. We got to be forever vigilant. Could it happen here? Well, I don't know if anybody's read Eagle Bud Crow's new book on integrity. Anybody seen that book? Anybody know who Eagle Bud Crow was? Yeah, one or two.
He's a big Jackson fan.
Is it? Well, it's good to know. He wasn't such a big Jackson fan 40 years ago. But
He's grown up.
well, a friend of mine is a next door neighbor. Played football at Principia College. Those of us who are connectors connect, right? Chuck played football at Principia College. Principia College is a college of the Christian Science Church, and it's located in Elsaw, Illinois. And Chuck called me on the phone about a month ago. He said, one of my charities is having lobster dinner next soon. You would come with us and give us $100 or whatever it was. You know those phone calls. He said, I'm sorry on that day I'm at Chautauqua. He said we had the football team's reunion at Principia College about a month ago. It was the greatest reunion in history. We had all these people there, and this guy came up and he gave this wonderful, wonderful speech. He cheered us all on the way we home and go out. And his speech was on integrity. And I said, well, who was it? And he said, it was Bud. Bud. I said, Bud who? Eagle Bud Crow is now going around the country speaking about integrity, right? Anyway, if you haven't read his book, I'm making light of it. It's a man called Thor. He was head of the plumbers, and he was responsible, at least he and E. Gordon Liddy and Howard Hunt broke into Lewis Fielding's office in Beverly Hills, California, I think it was. Lewis Fielding was the psychiatrist for Daniel Ellsberg, who released the Pentagon. Another question. I found out that very few of you know Eagle Bud Crow. How many of you read the Pentagon? 2, 3, 4. Anyway, so bottom line is, young zealots. How do we treat young zealots when they're dealing with scientific things? We don't have any American scientists. The last American who studied in my laboratory is 1997. 60% of the PhDs from our program at Bowling Green were Russians, are Russian. The rest are Chinese and Nepalese and whatever else. So how do we deal with their processing through the process? Don't know. They all become Americans because this is the place of America. Anyway, remember Eagle Bud Crow, whoever that other guy is. If my president says I should do it, I'll do it. And Ohio sends its love. Thank you very much for sending all your money to Ohio. I hate the TV ads, but what does it help the economy? Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
In 3D printing, did you have anything to do with the new phenomenon that's happening right now of making all kinds of...
No, I think that maybe That's a really interesting question. The problem, of course, is that we're all professionals, which means we're very intensely involved in what we do. We're focused. And the typical PhD student spends 4 or 5 years, and that's all they think about is that particular research problem. And then they say, well, gee, now I'm done with this, now I want to get a job, and so on. And so the question is, when do you have time to deal with the ethical issues? That's a bad excuse. A much more critical question, as far as I'm concerned, is this one. And that is that one of the phrases, I don't like Steve Jobs. I don't know about the rest of you, but I didn't like him after I read the book. But that's all right, he was brilliant. And whether I like him or not doesn't make any difference. But what he did, in fact, do, for those of us who remember those days, was he took Turing's Cathedral computer, which nobody could talk to,
and turn it into a device that could talk to everybody. He understood the nexus of Technology Street with Liberal Arts Avenue, Steve Jobs. That was one phrase that I really liked in Jacobson's book about him. And I think the most critical thing that we can do is just this kind of thing. My talking to those who are going to be not scientists, but find their way through the legal and economic and other banking and other professions that the really bright kids from our best universities tend to be going toward, and give them a little bit of a feeling for what the issues that scientists face really are. I've not given up on the scientists, and the critical question there is, we're training almost, there was a story in the Times within the last 2 weeks, 65% of the patent applications that come from universities are authored by persons not born in the United States. Now, you know, we're the place of American dreams. We have many immigrants in here, I'm sure. And we're the place of dreams. We can come here and we can live and we can make out what we can of our own abilities. It's a wonderful thing. The Constitution is just marvelous. But the point is that these people don't have 8th grade civics. Even my best students, even the ones that I work with every day, found it very difficult to understand Citizens United, for example. How is that possible? How can anybody say that a corporation is the equivalent to a person or whatever? I mean, the Citizens United decision, one we discussed vigorously. Everybody that works for my company, with the exception of 2, was born in Moscow and studied at Mendeleev University there. Had great experiences with the foreign nationals who've come to my labs, but they don't have the basic civics. And how do we teach it? I don't know. I really would like, I haven't given up, but I think the real critical issue is what we do with the liberal arts. Science for liberal arts students is terrible on our university campus. It's basically not successful, in my opinion. And I think that's where the most important thing is. Question?
Who was the German company that discovered and marketed thalidomide?
I don't remember, probably Bayer.
But it was Germany.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, what you have to know is that everything that I studied, now I graduated from college in 1960, everything that I studied was German technology in the organic chemistry books from which I studied. The book was written by Conan, terrible book, really not very good, but the book was written by James Bryan Conan, but it was German technology. The thing that really struck me about the PhD dissertations of which I read, of the 9 Nuremberg defendants that were convicted, or at least were part of the Farber trial, not all of them convicted, was how similar their thought processes were to mine, and how, it's because I learned from them. It's because their thesis looks just like mine. Different science, but that's what I learned about when I was an undergraduate. It's eerie. We don't have that same connection with our colleagues in China, but they have that connection with us. So that's an interesting question.
At the end of the war, the Allies and the former Soviet Union were trying to get the best chemists and physicists, etc. How did the West do in terms of getting really creeping across?
Where's Eli? Want to talk about Arthur Rudolph?
You're right. Obviously, the East and the West competed to sign up the so-called best of the German and Austrian scientific.
We can't really hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. East and West competed to sign up or kidnap the best of the most accomplished of the German and Austrian engineering and scientific talent. Clearly, the West did better. We had a better deal to offer freely. There was a moral price, I suppose, to be paid for that, but we got, the West got the best.
The case that I can speak about probably in more detail is AGFA. AGFA, many of the scientists in AGFA went quickly to get arrested by the West. And Nobel Prize-winning chemists ended up in jail in Munich. They ended up going to Switzerland and other places afterwards. But I have a whole list of about 25 AGFA scientists who were captured that way. While the East Germans, while the Russians took all that technology, which was in Wolfen, which is near Leipzig, near Dessau, and they moved it lock, stock, and barrel to Ukraine. So they had AGFA's facilities, which they didn't have any photographic stuff in Belgium, in Ukraine. They moved lock, stock, and barrel of technology there. And of course, and then they've had photography for a while, and then of course the technology escaped. I met some of those people actually, which is kind of fun. Eli.
Just sort of a follow-up to John Barrett's question. You spoke of scientists doing what governments pay for, obviously creating some very dangerous things like Zyklon B, which was used to murder inmates, Jews especially, at the Nazi camps. And I'm thinking of the various professions. Doctors had the Hippocratic Oath and the concept of doing no harm. As a result of Nuremberg, the development of the essential concept of informed consent, which those of us who have been hospitals are very familiar with when you have to sign the form. And doctors wrestle with this all the time. There's always a big debate in the medical community in the United States. Should doctors assist in the carrying out a capital punishment by injection and the life issues and the like in the legal profession as well? Lawyers devote countless hours to developing laws that bar certain types of human rights offenses, bar certain kinds of practices, and also bar the use of certain kinds of weapons, as we have ban on